Ever had a neighbor so entitled they thought your power bill was theirs to share? Yeah, me neither, until I caught them in the act. Late one night in my quiet suburban neighborhood of Maplewood, I sat at my kitchen table staring at my electricity bill, my fingers gripping the paper so tightly it nearly tore. My eyes widened in disbelief. The total had doubled from last month. My heart pounded. This wasn't just a slight increase. Something was very wrong. Determined to find the cause, I checked every appliance, every light, even the circuit breakers. Nothing explained the spike. Was there a faulty wire? Had I left something running overnight? My mind raced with possibilities. Then, just as I was about to give up, a flicker of movement in the darkness outside caught my attention. From my front window, hidden behind the curtains, I peered out onto my driveway. My breath hitched. There, in the shadows, was my neighbor, Lisa Harrington. She moved stealthily, dressed in dark clothing, her face barely visible under the dim glow of a street lamp. My stomach twisted as I watched her plug a long black cable into my outdoor power outlet. My jaw dropped. My eyes darted to the end of the cord, straight into her Tesla. A rush of anger surged through me. She was stealing my electricity. How long had this been going on? Weeks? Months? Blood roared in my ears as I bolted to my security system, pulling up the footage. My hands trembled as I hit play. What I saw made my blood run cold. Lisa had been creeping into my driveway night after night, siphoning my power like a parasite. She thought she was getting away with it. She was dead wrong. I live in a neighborhood where rules are strict. Homeowners Association fines you for the tiniest infractions, like leaving your bin out too long or having grass half an inch too tall. But there's always that one person who acts like the rules don't apply to them, right? In my case, that was Karen, entitled, manipulative, and convinced she owned the whole street. At first, I thought she was just your standard HOA nightmare, the kind who'd report you for breathing too loudly. But Karen wasn't just about petty complaints. No, she had a different game. One that involved stealing from me right under my nose. I should have known something was off when my electricity bill doubled overnight. It wasn't the aircon, it wasn't my fridge, and I sure as hell wasn't running a secret nightclub in my garage. Then, one night, I caught something on my security camera. Karen, sneaking into my driveway like some low-budget criminal, plugging her electric car into my outdoor power outlet. Weeks. She had been doing this for weeks, but here's where it gets even better. When I confronted her, expecting some guilty apology, she just smirked. Smirked, looked me dead in the eyes and said, "I don't know what you're talking about." Even when I showed her the footage, she had the nerve to deny everything. And then, just to top it off, she turned it around on me, threatening to report me to the HOA for harassing her. That was it. I was done playing nice. Karen thought she had won. She thought she could steal from me, lie straight to my face and walk away without consequences. But what she didn't realize was that she had messed with the wrong person. If she wanted to play dirty, I was about to raise the stakes. Have you ever dealt with a nightmare neighbor like this? Let me know in the comments. Type 1 if you've had a Karen in your life, and 2 if you just enjoy watching people get what they deserve. And if you're ready for the ultimate revenge plan, trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because this story, it's just getting started. I wasn't going to let Karen get away with it. She thought she was untouchable, that she could lie, steal, and manipulate her way out of anything. But I had a plan, one that would make her regret ever stepping onto my property. The security footage I had was solid, but I needed undeniable proof. Something that would leave her with no way to twist the truth. So, I upgraded my setup. I installed a second camera, this one positioned at a better angle, capturing her entire approach from her house to my driveway. Then, I added a power usage tracker to my outdoor outlet, logging the exact times and durations when it was being used. But the real masterpiece? A little adjustment to the power supply. Instead of feeding electricity directly from my house, I rewired the outlet to connect to a backup battery, one that held just enough charge to turn on, but not enough to actually charge anything. And to top it off, I set up a hidden speaker, programmed to play a very special message at exactly the right moment. Then, I waited. Sure enough, just past midnight, Karen crept out of her house. This time, she wasn't even trying to be subtle. She walked straight into my driveway, charger in hand, and plugged in without hesitation. No sneaky glances, no hesitation, just absolute entitlement. And that's when it happened. A few seconds later, the hidden speaker activated, blasting through the silence of the night. Karen screamed. Not a little yelp, not a startled gasp, but a full-on shriek of pure terror. Her head snapped up, eyes wide, scanning the darkness. She fumbled with the charger, yanking it out so fast she nearly tripped over herself. But her hands were shaking so badly she dropped it, then scrambled to pick it up before bolting back toward her house. I watched it all unfold, barely able to contain my laughter. She was terrified. And that was just the beginning. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. It was perfect. Crystal clear video of Karen sneaking over, plugging in her car, and then running away in sheer panic when my message played. She couldn't deny it now. I sent the footage directly to the homeowners association, filing a formal complaint. I expected them to act fast. After all, this was blatant theft. But days passed. No response, no action, just vague emails and excuses. That's when I realized Karen had friends in the HOA. Maybe she'd been pulling strings for years. Maybe they just didn't want to deal with it. But one thing was clear, they weren't going to help me. Fine. I didn't need them. It was time to take things to the next level. The homeowners association had failed me. No action, no accountability, just silence. But if Karen thought that meant she was off the hook, she was dead wrong. If the HOA wouldn't hold her accountable, then the entire neighborhood would. That evening, I decided to have a chat with my next-door neighbor, Mr. Peterson. He was an older gentleman, quiet but sharp. I expected mild surprise when I told him about Karen's electricity theft. Maybe even a bit of sympathy. Instead, his expression darkened. "You too," he muttered, shaking his head. That's when he revealed something that made my blood boil. Karen had been stealing from multiple neighbors for months. 2 others had noticed unexplained spikes in their bills, but hadn't caught her in the act. Their suspicions had been brushed aside, until now. Now I had proof, and I was going to use it. The next day, I compiled everything: the security footage, the time-stamped power logs, and statements from the other victims, and sent it to every homeowner in the neighborhood. Within hours, the quiet suburb buzzed with outrage. The HOA couldn't ignore it anymore. At the next homeowners meeting, Mr. Peterson took the lead. He stormed in, demanding answers. Other neighbors followed, their voices rising as they called for action. Karen was cornered. When she arrived, her usual smug confidence had vanished. For the first time, she wasn't the one controlling the conversation. "This is harassment!" she shrieked, her face red with frustration. "I'm being bullied! It was just a misunderstanding!" But the evidence was undeniable. The footage didn't lie. Clear video of her sneaking onto properties, plugging in her car, and then fleeing like a criminal when caught. And when more neighbors came forward with similar complaints, the HOA had no choice but to act. They hit Karen with a massive fine. Not just for stealing electricity, but for violating multiple neighborhood rules. She was forced to pay back every cent for the stolen power. And to make sure this never happened again, the HOA banned her from using any outdoor outlets in the neighborhood. If she wanted to charge her car, she'd have to install her own charging station, out of her own pocket. Karen tried arguing, tried looking for loopholes, but it was too late. She had gotten away with too much for too long, and now she had finally crossed the line. For the first time since she moved in, Karen had lost, and she knew it. After that meeting, Karen was a different person. The arrogant, rule-breaking neighbor who used to strut around like she owned the place. She was gone. She stopped making snide remarks. Stopped glaring at me whenever we crossed paths. In fact, she wouldn't even make eye contact anymore. It was almost funny. She had spent so much time making everyone else uncomfortable, and now she was the one who couldn't handle the judgment. But the best part? None of us were going to take any chances. After everything Karen had done, no one wanted to risk another entitled neighbor pulling the same stunt. So, one by one, we all installed lockable outdoor outlets, ensuring that no one would ever be able to steal power again. Karen must have realized her reign of terror was over, because a few months later, something unexpected happened. A for sale sign appeared on her front lawn. Maybe it was the fines. Maybe it was the humiliation. Or maybe she just couldn't stand living in a neighborhood where she no longer had control. Whatever the reason, she was leaving. And honestly, good riddance. Karen was done. Or at least, that's what we thought. After the humiliating HOA meeting, she vanished. No more late-night electricity theft, no more petty complaints. For the first time in years, The neighborhood felt peaceful. But deep down, I knew Karen. She wasn't the type to walk away quietly. And I was right. A week later, something strange happened. Mr. Peterson, my neighbor who had helped expose Karen, woke up to find his car's tires slashed. Not just deflated, shredded. Whoever did it made sure he wasn't going anywhere. At first, it seemed like random vandalism, until another neighbor found deep scratches running across the side of their car. The kind of damage that couldn't be accidental. And then it hit me. Karen wasn't done yet. This was payback. She knew she couldn't win the fight openly, so she turned to cheap, underhanded tactics, the kind that couldn't be easily traced back to her. But she made a big mistake. One of my security cameras, a new one I had installed after the whole electricity theft fiasco, had caught everything. And there she was. Karen, in the middle of the night, hood pulled up, sneaking from house to house, keying cars, slashing tires, and even ripping out plants from someone's front yard. She thought she was being careful, thought she was getting away with it. She wasn't. The next morning, I took the footage straight to the police. This wasn't just petty neighborhood drama anymore. This was criminal damage. The officers watched the footage in stunned silence. When it ended, one of them shook his head. "This is bad," he muttered. "Yeah, no kidding." Karen wasn't just annoying anymore, she was dangerous. That afternoon, 3 police cars pulled up in front of her house. She tried to deny everything, of course, claimed she was being targeted, that we were all out to get her. But then the cops showed her the footage. And just like that, her little game was over. They handcuffed her on the spot, reading her rights as she shrieked about how unfair this was. How she was the real victim. But no one was listening. We all stood on our porches, watching in silence as she was shoved into the back of the squad car. For years, Karen had acted untouchable. She had bullied, lied, and stolen, thinking she would never face consequences. Now, she was gone. And this time, for good. We thought it was finally over. Karen had been arrested, humiliated, and dragged away in cuffs. The neighborhood felt lighter, the air less tense. For the first time in years, we could finally breathe. But we were wrong, because Karen wasn't done yet. A few weeks later, strange things started happening. It began with phone calls. Mr. Peterson got a call at 2 a.m., a raspy voice whispering threats before hanging up. Another neighbor reported seeing a black SUV parked outside their house at night, headlights off, engine idling. Then, my front door got smashed in. I came home late one evening to find the door cracked open, wood splintered, the lock completely destroyed. Inside, the place had been ransacked, drawers pulled out, furniture overturned, and on my kitchen counter, carved into the wood with a knife, just 2 words: "Watch out." That was it. This wasn't over. This wasn't random revenge. This was personal. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. The officer on duty frowned, tapping his pen against the desk. "You think it's Karen?" I nodded. "Who else?" He sighed. "Look, mate, she made bail." I felt my stomach drop. Bail? Karen was back on the streets? How? The officer shrugged. Her lawyer spun some sob story about how she's being persecuted by vengeful neighbors. Judge gave her a slap on the wrist. My hands clenched into fists. This woman had stolen from us, vandalized homes, threatened people, and now she was free? That night, I stayed awake. I sat in the dark, watching the street, waiting. And then, I saw it. A car, parked at the end of the block. Engine off, barely visible. And inside, a silhouette, sitting, watching. Karen. She wanted fear. She wanted us to feel helpless. But she made a critical mistake. She thought she still had power over us. She didn't. Because this time, we were ready. Karen thought she could terrorize us into submission. She thought fear would drive us away, force us to let her win. She thought we'd break. She thought wrong. I wasn't the only one who had enough. After the break-in, I called an emergency meeting with Mr. Peterson and the other neighbors. We gathered in my living room, the air thick with tension. Mrs. Dawson, normally the quietest among us, spoke first. "We can't keep living like this." Mr. Peterson nodded. "She's playing a game. She's trying to scare us, make us doubt ourselves. But she doesn't know. We can play too." A slow grin spread across my face. Exactly. If Karen wanted a war, we were about to end it. That night, we set the trap. Mr. Peterson, a retired electrician, rigged my front porch light to flicker if the motion sensor detected movement. I set up hidden security cameras, not just the usual spots, but angles she wouldn't expect. And just to be extra sure, I left something special plugged into the outdoor outlet Karen had stolen from for weeks. A decoy charger wired to a silent alarm system. If she tried anything, we'd know. We waited. And then, she came. It was 2:47 a.m. when my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I sat up, heart pounding, and checked the security feed. There she was. Karen, dressed in all black, creeping toward my house like some low-budget criminal. She was bolder this time. She didn't just snoop around. She walked straight up to my porch gripping a crowbar. I could barely believe what I was seeing. Karen wasn't just trying to scare me anymore. She was escalating. She wanted revenge. I could feel my blood boil, but I forced myself to wait. She stepped onto the porch. The flickering light made her hesitate. She looked around, then reached for the door handle. That's when the alarm triggered. A deafening siren exploded through the night. Karen panicked. She dropped the crowbar, stumbled back, eyes wide with pure terror. And then, the floodlights hit her. Bright. Blinding. Inescapable. She froze, caught like a rat in a trap. And standing in my driveway recording everything was half the neighborhood. She had nowhere to run. This time, Karen was done. Karen's arrogance. The game intensifies. I thought Karen might back off after being exposed. I thought the public humiliation at the HOA meeting would be enough to make her stop. I was dead wrong. Instead of apologizing or keeping a low profile, Karen doubled down. She strutted around the neighborhood like a queen who couldn't be touched, throwing smug glances my way as if daring me to try anything else. And then, the power outages started. It began with small things. My porch lights flickered, my Wi-Fi kept dropping, and my security cameras mysteriously shut down at night. At first I thought it was a coincidence, until Mr. Peterson knocked on my door. "Have you been having issues?" he asked, his face tight with suspicion. That's when I knew. Karen wasn't just stealing electricity anymore. She was tampering with it. She wanted payback. I wasn't about to let her win. So I did what any smart neighbor would do. I set a trap. First, I installed a backup power source, a hidden generator that kept my security system running even if the power was cut. Then, I replaced my outdoor outlet with a decoy, one that looked real, but was rigged to detect tampering. And finally, I upgraded my cameras, not just one or two, but 4 hidden cameras covering every angle of my driveway. If Karen tried anything, she wouldn't just get caught. She'd be recorded in 4K. I didn't have to wait long. 2 nights later, at 1:30 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion detected. I grabbed my phone, my pulse racing. And there she was. Karen, dressed in all black, creeping towards my house with a pair of pliers. She reached for my electrical box, fiddling with the wires. She was trying to cut my power, again. But this time, I was ready. I tapped my phone screen, activating the hidden speaker I'd placed nearby. A deep, robotic voice boomed through the night. "Step away from the power box. You are being recorded." Karen jumped so hard she nearly fell backwards. Her head snapped around, eyes wide with pure panic. And then, she bolted. She ran straight to her house, tripping over her own feet, completely exposed on my security footage. The next morning, I sent the footage to the HOA, the police, and every single neighbor she had wronged. There was no escape this time. She had gone from a petty thief to a full-blown criminal. And now, she was about to face real consequences. But here's the real question. What should I do next? Should I press charges and take her to court? Or should I make her life even more miserable first? Comment number "Justice for me" if you think I should call the cops. Or comment "Your petty revenge" if you want me to make Karen's life a living nightmare before she finally faces justice. And don't forget, like, share, and subscribe if you want to see how this story ends. Because trust me, this isn't over yet.